it for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Playing on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Playing on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur.
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the ball!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Stanley pour les Canadiens, le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup!
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. La Vida Tibi. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
Good Friday evening, everyone. My name's Matt Ohayon. Welcome to the Sick Podcast and welcome to your weekend. Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Energy Transportation Group is a leading full-service logistics provider serving all of North America, driven to be different. We're also brought to you by Playground, and celebrate Super Bowl Sunday at Playground with a tailgate menu starting at 2 p.m. featuring game day classics like wings, burgers, loaded cheese fries, and their game-breaking fried basket. Enjoy $25 Heineken buckets and catch all the action on their huge screen. Kickoff is at 6:30. Don't miss the biggest football event of the year. Visit playground.ca for details. We're also brought to you by Bittt Tibi beer. Bittt Tibi has launched their new Ultra Lager, a refreshing, thirst-quenching beer, perfect for those chilly winter days with only 90 calories, 2 grams of carbs, and 4% alcohol per can. Available in a pack of 6 or 12 in grocery stores all around the province of Quebec. Ultra light and ultra refreshing. And as you know by now, we're also brought to you by Betway. Go all the way with Betway and get a free bet up to $200 if your first bet loses. Scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in the details section to create an account and redeem your welcome offer. Offer is available only for new customers. Terms and conditions apply. Offer is not available in Ontario. You must be 18 years or older, and please play responsibly. It's easy come, easy go for the Habs, right? I mean, they go on this amazing run, and then the month of February hits, and all hell breaks loose. Really, it started at the end of January, but we'll call it the month of February because January as a whole was pretty good. It's funny how the swings in a hockey game can emanate the emotions throughout a season. And, that's just the way it goes. But we're going to break it all down. We're going to break down the past week with my usual Friday guest, Mr. Stu Cowan of the Montreal Gazette. Stu, how's it going?
I'm doing pretty well. Yourself?
I'm doing fine. I'm doing a lot better than the Canadiens are doing, at least on the ice. I mean, listen, they just came back from California, so they're probably doing pretty good in that sense. But, it's isn't it amazing that if it wasn't for, I don't want to call it a lucky win, but after the month of January and how that went for the Canadiens, if it weren't for a game where they were heavily outshot by a pretty poor San Jose Sharks team, escape with a victory, we'd be talking about 7 losses in a row after the month of January that this team had.
Yeah, 1 win in their last 7, and it's a case I think we talked about a little bit last week, just the lack of depth on this team and the injury to Gooley and the injury to Heineman really taking a big blow on this team. And it's a young team, so it's sort of surprising that they look like they're tired and have lost their legs. But then you have to also factor in a guy like Lane Hudson's never played this many games in his life in a season. But they're crawling to the break, right? They got these 2 games this weekend, New Jersey and Tampa, not easy competition. It could be 1 win in 9 games as they go into this 4 Nations face-off break. And it was about a week ago when Marty St. Louis said, they just wanted to get to that break. They think the team needs it and try and stay in the hunt for a wild card spot. But, they're heading into the games Friday night. There's 6 points out of a wild card spot. But more importantly than that, there's 4 teams between them and Detroit for the last spot. So even like when you win games, you're not necessarily the last team. So it doesn't look very good for this team moving forward as far as making the playoffs. But the effort level needs to be better. And now they're back home for these 2 weekend games, Super Bowl weekend. It's a great atmosphere at the Bell Center every year for these 2 games. Lots of kids in the audience. And if they can't get up for these 2 games, then they really got a problem.
Well, it's funny because we've been talking about this for a couple weeks now, where every game on the schedule has become the most important game of the season. And I think Thursday's game wasn't so much of they didn't get up for the game, more so that LA just overmatched them. They did, when it's 1 minute and 45 seconds into the game and shots are already 8-1 for the opposing team, you do come out a little flat. This has been a constant problem. I feel like a broken record saying it, but I feel like Martin St. Louis made a grave error by saying openly that this team is just trying to make it to the break, because that's showing, maybe I'm just perceiving it this way, but that shows to me that your team is weak and it's wounded prey, and other teams are just going to feast on that. They know that they're tired. They know that they just need to come out hard in the first 10 minutes and really set the tone of the game. And they probably have the Canadiens in the bag. And we've seen that, basically throughout this entire 7-game stretch, with the exception of San Jose, although San Jose came out flying also, and they got out to a 1-0 lead in that game.
Yeah. And again, youth, it's hard to explain how, okay, it was a back-to-back game for them in LA, but I mean, 8-1, as you said, their shots are just totally dominated. And you look at a team like, Minnesota, which lost Kaprizov, one of the best players in the NHL. They beat Montreal without him. They beat Ottawa without him. I think they're 3-2 in 5 games since he had surgery for his lower body injury. Minnesota's a team that finds ways to win. I was looking at the standings earlier today. They're in a playoff spot. They have a +1 goal differential this season. They have an incredible road record. So teams, Marty St. Louis has talked about, they have to learn how to win. And that was part of the goal this season in year 3 of the rebuild, was learning how to win. And they haven't learned that yet. They really haven't. I mean, as I say, you take a team like Minnesota, they just grind and battle and scrap it out and find a way to win those tight games. And it's concerning that the Canadiens have been dominated early in games so often for the last little while. It really is a concern. I'm not sure how Marty St. Louis goes about fixing that. I'm sure they've tried all kinds of different stuff, but it's really concerning when a young team like that, you think they'd be fired up coming out to play every game, right? So many of these young guys happy to be in the NHL, loving the life. It's hard to explain why they come out flat like they did against LA the other night.
Well, that's it. It's kind of almost as if they don't set the tone. They're already settled into a game that hasn't happened yet. When there's that second period lull, usually that's how the Canadiens come out in the first period. And like you said, it's kind of inexplicable.
Well, and part of the explanation actually is the loss of Heineman, because that fourth line with him, Evans, and Armia, while it was the fourth line, they also were the first line to start most games, or a lot of games. And Marty would put them out there to set the tone, right? Armia and Heineman, big bodies, Jake Evans, 3 guys who were working really hard and clicking together. And he put that line out there to start so many games and set that tone. And they don't have that right now. They really don't. As I see Owen Beck play, Owen Beck had a good game. He played well using his body, using his weight. He's the guy to sort of replace Heineman, although he's a center, not a winger, and they have him playing out of position right now. But they just need they need that spark, that line. I remember back in the glory days of the Canadiens when they had that line with Roysbrough, Tremblay, and Lambert, and they'd throw them out there and they'd set the tone. They need to get a line that's going to set the tone, and they don't really have that right now.
And you know what? Not to be I don't know which. I don't have a good pulse on the as of late on the Canadiens fans and how they're feeling, but it feels to me, at least, how could you not be thinking about this team the way people were thinking about them after the 9-2 loss against Pittsburgh, through those slumps early in the season? It's hard not to think like that. And it's crazy because I remember 2.5 weeks ago, we're sitting here talking, oh my God, who are the Canadiens going to acquire at the deadline? They've earned it. And 2.5 weeks later, we're back at square one. What could they get for Yoel Armia and Jake Evans? What can they get for David Savard? What could they get for this? It's really that's got to be deflating, because at this point, Jeff Gordon, he was on the Sick podcast, the eye test with Pierre Maguire. You ask him that question again. I don't, plans changed because that was going to be a short-term move to give them a little treat because they've earned it. But that changed with, people could debate, was it the post that Christian Dvorak hit against Toronto? Was it the Gouli injury that derailed the team? Hard to say, but it's just, you got to feel like that short-term plan is, they crumpled that up and threw it out the window at this point.
Kent Hughes said that at his midseason news conference and asked what the trade deadline. I said it would depend where we are. There's games to play, quite a few games to play until then. We'll see where we're sitting. And right now, it certainly looks like they're not going to be in the mix for a playoff spot after the trade deadline. I think they want to keep Jake Evans. Gorton basically said that when he was on the Sick podcast that they're going to keep the talks quiet, but they're hoping they can come to a contract that both sides agree on. But I think he's probably the only one of those guys you mentioned that they're going to keep now. I mean, if they were close to the playoffs, so they keep David Savard, maybe. It's sort of like having a coach on the ice with these young guys. But with him, Dvorak, Army, I think they move all three of them now the way things are going. And this team isn't as good as it was when they're on that 13-3-1 stretch. And they're not as bad as they've been these last 7 games. They're somewhere in between, right? They're a 500 hockey team at best with what they have this season. And that's right about where they are overall for the year. So, they went on that big run. Can they do it again? I don't think so. Not without Gouli, not without Heineman. Dobish has sort of come back to earth a little bit, which isn't a shock for a first-year goalie, although it wasn't, he's getting bombarded with shots too. But yeah, the plans change, and going into this trade deadline, they're going to be sellers. And I think Kent Hughes also mentioned this. They've got enough draft picks. They have tons of draft picks. They have 2 firsts, 2 seconds this year. They have Michael Hayes. They have Demidov. They have all these young guys coming up. I think at the trade deadline, they're going to be looking for sort of like what they do with Carrier, finding players who can help this team next season right away. To go in with the younger guys they have coming. I don't think, if they get a first round pick, they're going to take it. But if it's second, third, fourth round picks, I think they'd prefer to get players who can play in the NHL now and help this team next season, sort of like what they did, with Kirby Dach and with Newhook. Because at some point you got to get past the point where you're just accumulating draft picks and draft picks and draft picks. And it looks like they've drafted well. I mean, you never know until guys get in the NHL, but you look at their last few picks. David Reinbacher's the one big question mark. We haven't really seen enough of him. The good news is he's practicing with the Canadiens now. He's skating again ahead of schedule after that knee surgery. He looks like he'll definitely be playing games with Laval in the near future, maybe with the Canadiens too before the end of the season. We saw Logan Mailloux get called up. It was interesting they called him up. They put him with Mike Matheson, also getting back to the lefty-righty on all 3 of their defense pairings. Excuse me. So there's still the future still looks bright for this team, as bad as things are right now. Demidov is going to give them a big boost offensively next year. And Michael Hayes, as I mentioned, he's probably got another year at University of Michigan, I would think. Owen Beck hasn't looked out of place in the 4 games he's played. He'll be with the Canadiens next season. Jacob Fowler coming up for more goaltending depth. So they've done, Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon done a lot of good things in the first 3 years of this rebuild. But it's a young team, and they're still learning how to win. And right now they're learning how to lose. And Marty St. Louis said that the other day. So we keep finding ways to lose in these games. And during that slump or during that streak, they're finding ways to win. And as I mentioned, a team like the Minnesota Wild, a more experienced team, they know how to win. Even when they're not playing well, they know how to win games. Yeah,
if I think if they took the exam for learning how to lose, learning to lose 101, they'd have an A+++ right now. But just go back to
the Wild. I'm just saying the Wild. They're 27-3 on the road, and they're 12-1 at home. Like 27-3 on the road. That's crazy.
That's actually unbelievable, and I'm sure
that says a lot about the team character.
Record.
That says a lot about team character and learning how to win. And even when you have your B game, Marty St. Louis likes to use the A game, B game a lot. The Wild can win when they have their B game. Looks like they can win when they have their C game. They just find a way, and the Canadiens need to learn how to find a way to win.
Well, that's it. And you know what? It seemed like they knew, or at least they were figuring out how to win games. Because let's be honest here. Save for a couple games on that, that stretch, that run in January, there wasn't a lot of 60-minute, full wins, dominant victories by the Canadiens. There were a couple, but really you want to compare it to the Minnesota Wild and saying how they were finding ways to win. The Canadiens were finding ways to win. They were scratching and clawing their way back from 2-3 goal deficits, 1 goal deficits in the third, and they were finding ways to win those games. So they're not going to lose that. While it is all doom and gloom, like you said, there is some positives. And we could look, long-term positives in terms of prospects and whatnot. But, I think by now, and our listeners and viewers know by now, and producer Shane knows by now, that I hate draft pick talk. I really despise it. And it's one of the most depressing ways to watch hockey, I find, as a fan. The other side of that is Kent Hughes has shown that he kind of operates in the way an NBA GM operates. Now, I don't know if you've been paying attention, Stu. I don't know.
Not to.
Yeah, exactly. The
NBA fan. I get all the news from him. Yeah.
There you go. So the NBA trade deadline was just yesterday. It's absolutely bonkers the week leading up. There was obviously the Luka trade, but except for that, let's put that one aside. If you take a look at another trade, you could take a look at I don't know which team he went to and whatever, but I know that Dennis Schroeder, he's a point guard in the NBA. He was traded twice on the trade deadline. Twice. PJ Tucker, another player, traded twice on trade deadline. Kent Hughes has shown, at least not with players, because that's really rare in the NHL. You could probably count on one hand how many times that's happened, that a player has been traded, within a week, let alone within a day. But he's shown he'll acquire a piece, call it a first-round pick, couple that with something else, and ship it off in another deal right away. Mm-hmm. So that's where draft pick talk can come into play for the Canadiens, because, I look as, last week, or earlier this week, whatever it was, the haul that the San Jose Sharks got for Cody Ceci and Michael Granlund. Now, Michael Granlund was a great hockey player. His best years are certainly behind him. Cody Ceci, lifetime 6th defenseman. They got a first-round pick and a conditional 5th, I think, or something. And it's only natural to think in a Habs lens, what does that translate to if Michael Granlund and Cody Ceci go for that? What could David Savard go for? What could Yoel Armia go for? What could, I know they want to keep him, but what could Jake Evans go for? If you package those things together, what could these pieces go for? And, while the Canadiens, like you said, Kent, you said they have too many draft picks right now.
Yeah,
he won't be afraid to couple 2 first-round picks that, Calgary's first-round pick and this hypothetical first-round pick that they're going to acquire for, a young NHL player ready to go. I think I've had enough of the reclamation projects. I think they need something certain now. They need some stability. But yeah, he's just shown that, I don't know who this player is, but he's shown that he's not afraid to do these things and get creative in his deals.
Yeah, and as I mentioned with the Carrier trade earlier, like that helped the team right away, right? They knew they needed some stability on the blue line. They knew they needed a veteran presence, and they knew they needed a right-hand shot, and they got all that from Carrier. Give up on Justin Barron. It's hard to say what you're going to get for guys at the trade deadline, because the biggest mistakes GMs make are on July 1st and on the trade deadline, right? You always have guys that are paying too much money for guys on July 1st and too much term, or making desperate moves at the trade deadline to either get into the playoffs or maybe win the cup or maybe save your job. You think back to Ben Sherratt 3 years ago. He was a 30-year-old defenseman at the time, and Hughes was able to get Ty Smilanic, remember him? But also a first-round pick and a fourth-round pick for Ben Sherratt. Now, you think, is Jake Evans more valuable to a team than Ben Sherratt was then? I would think so. Does that mean you're going to get a first-round pick? Maybe. I think it was Pierre LeBrun reported this week that the Canadiens are looking for minimum a second-round pick if they end up trading Evans. But teams overpay at the trade deadline. David Savard was traded for a first-round pick there a few years ago when he ended up in Tampa. So you never know. But asset management has been one of Kent Hughes' strength. Every trade he makes, it seems to be it's this, and that. That the Foley trade, it was this, and Emil Heineman, right? The time seemed almost like a throw-in in the trade, far from it. So his asset management has been really good, and that's why the Canadiens, as upset as some Canadiens fans might be now that they're falling out of the mix. I didn't think this team was good enough to make the playoffs when the season started, even with a healthy Patrik Laine. But as I say, when you're looking forward, there's a lot of reasons for optimism moving forward. And Kent Hughes is in a position where at the trade deadline to make this a much better team for next season. Looking ahead to next season, bringing in maybe some younger guys who can stabilize some of the positions they're going to, if they end up losing Armia, get a younger type of Armia player to replace him. Savard bringing maybe another defenseman like Carrier if they're not convinced that Mayu, Reinbacher are ready to step right in. So the asset management is one of the key things for a GM. And, Ken Hughes has been really good at that. And asset management and also the contracts, like the contracts that Cole Caulfield have and Slavkovsky, if you can turn things around a bit more moving forward with the salary cap increasing as much as it's going to be, could look like really good contracts in the future. But again, I think Ken Hughes has done a really good job, and I expect he'll do a good job again at this trade deadline. And he's not going to panic. He said at the midseason, though, they still have their long-range goal of building a team that's going to be competitive in the playoffs every year, not just we'll get in and anything can happen type of thing. And I think there's still a couple of years. I think there's still another 2 years away from reaching that point.
Yeah, I think they are too. And it's just, one player who has been making the headlines, I don't know if he would qualify as a quote unquote reclamation project, but he's been in the headlines. It's been reported that the Canadiens are in on the Buffalo Sabres shopping around Dylan Cozens. This is a 23-year-old center, big center he scored 70 points in his career. Then he signed that contract and it all went downhill from there. I'm not going to pretend I'm a Dylan Cozens expert, but it feels like to me, 6'3", listed at 6'3", 207.
Yeah.
This is the type of player that Kent Hughes has been targeting, young, still has, more juice to squeeze out of the orange, and has shown at least at some level that he can compete at the NHL level. I don't know. I'm not in Kent Hughes' head. On the surface, seems like a good deal to me. You get a 74. He is a 70-point player. He hasn't been in the last 2 seasons, but you get a 70-point player, and you could slot him in your second line, push Kirby Dach down to the third line, or you could do the reverse. It's an expensive third line center, but keep
Kirby Dach on the wing.
Exactly. So it's just there's ways that this team can be constructed that I think bode well for the future, but they still don't get it twisted. A lot of Habs fans think that Ivan Demidov is just going to come in and he'll be the savior to this team. That's not going to happen. They need more than just that, as they've shown the way they like to play. They like to roll 4 lines, right? Yeah. And right now you have Christian Dvorak as your third line center. Well, I would take Dylan Cozens as a third line center, and maybe we are going to see third line centers start to make that much money, considering how much the cap is going to go up in the next 3 years.
Yeah, if they do acquire Dylan Cozens, I think he's your second line center next season. I mean, number 7 overall pick, as you mentioned, 2022-23 had 31 goals, dropped off to 18 last season. He has 10 this season, but you also got to factor in he's in Buffalo. You talk about a losing culture and a losing attitude. That's got to be a really tough place to play. This is what the 14th year in a row that team's going to miss the playoffs. That's got to be a tough place to play. And it goes back to what I said earlier too about Kent Hughes looking not more draft picks, looking for guys who can step in and help this team next season take another big step in this rebuild. He's a guy, definitely 23 years old, 6'3", 207 pounds, centerman, always extra value with the centerman. And they have pieces they could give up to Buffalo that would probably be attractive to make that type of a deal. And that's Kent Hughes. That's the way he works, right? Getting that guy, another guy in that 23, that same age bracket as Caulfield and Suzuki and all these guys. They're all in that same sort of age group. And as I mentioned again, I think they're 2 years away from being where they were hoping to be when this rebuild started. And if it doesn't mean it's going to work, but again, I didn't think this was a playoff team this year. We'll see what they do in the off season. Maybe heading into next season, I think they'll be good enough to get into the playoffs. But 2 years from now, if this is a team that's still, falling behind, and at this point in the season is 8 points out of or 6 points out of a wild card spot, that's when you can start questioning if things are working or not.
Well, there's a couple things there. I think that also the first shoe to drop would be Martin St. Louis. That's the first shoe to drop because, on the surface, you could look at all these deals that Kent Hughes is making, and you could say he's coming out on top and he's acquiring the right guys. He's acquiring the talent. He's doing all these things. But at a certain point, this is like what people used to be critical of, Marc Bergevin during his time was the drafting. And I agree. It was poor drafting. But a lot of people are blaming it on development. But at a certain point, it's on the player. The player has to have the want and the drive and the want and the will to succeed at this level. When you don't have that, they made it there. They clearly have the talent. So you got to kind of point your finger at, would Martin St. Louis be the right guy? But we're not there yet. We're still.
No, Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon love Marty St. Louis, right? Like the last thing they want to do is fire him. At some point, every coach gets fired eventually, right? I think St. Louis is like the 6th longest tenured coach in the NHL, and he's in year 3.
It's crazy to think about.
Which is crazy. But part of that big picture rebuilding plan, they think Marty St. Louis is the coach for a young team to help rebuild them. And, Jeff Gordon had some interesting comments when he was on the Sick podcast there saying, Marty's learning along with his players, and he admits that he's still learning as a coach. And he says that's maybe one of the appeals he has to young guys. Like, we're all in this together. But before there would be any thought of firing Marty St. Louis, I think they'd maybe bring in a more experienced assistant coach to help them out. I've said many times in this podcast, I'm surprised they didn't do that when Alex Burrows stepped down. I asked Kent Hughes about that at his midseason news conference, and he said Marty wanted to take over the power play, which is what Burrows did, and see how things went. It was just the 3 guys behind the bench. But Hughes also said, well, we'll see how things are after this season. And if he comes to me and says, well, maybe I need this, maybe I need that. So maybe they do add another assistant coach behind the bench with more NHL experience to help him out. Gordon also said when he's on the Sick podcast, one of the toughest things for an NHL coach is running the bench, especially when you're going up against John Cooper, guys like that who are masters and tons of experience coaching. You got to remember, Marty went right from coaching Bantam hockey to coaching NHL hockey. He knows the game, he knows players, but he's never run an NHL bench, right? Until then, never run a bench apart from kids. Huge difference. And I think Luke Richardson was a guy he could really lean on when he first took the job. Of course, Luke left to go to Chicago, since been fired. Would they bring Luke Richardson back? I don't know. I'm sure Luke Richardson was hoping to get another head coaching job somewhere. We'll see if that happens. But one of the things moving forward, I think that would help the team is to give Marty some extra help behind the bench. Another guy to help run the bench, spot maybe things that he doesn't spot. And there's no salary cap on coaches, right? They have 3 guys behind the bench. They could have 4 guys behind the bench, right? 4 is better than 3, right? It's just have that other eye. And then, look like a guy like Dominic Ducharme. As a head coach, I don't think he had the personality that Marty has to be a head coach, that instant respect, that ability to control a room and be, but he's an assistant coach in Vegas now. And I think he's a perfect guy for an assistant coach. Like, he knows the game. He knows his X's and O's. Like, he's not worrying as the assistant coach there. He's not worried about running the bench and doing everything else. He's focusing on certain things and feeding that to the head coach. And I think something like that would help Marty St. Louis moving forward.
Well, that's it. Some people are just not built to be head coaches.
No, I'm with 3 coaches. Like, one coach is Marty's a head coach.
Yeah.
One coach is running the forwards and one coach is running the defense. But the 4th guy behind the bench, he's sort of taking everything in, right? He's not worried about who the next defenseman is up or who the next forwards are up. He's just analyzing what's going on in the game and maybe watching what the other teams matchups they're trying to set up. Just that other eye and that other ear in your voice in your ear, just picking up other things. And I think that's something the Canadiens should do moving forward.
Yeah, and it's just I think Martin St. Louis has the personality And he's the type of guy you want. I think he's proven he can be a leader of men. Not everyone can be. Not everyone.
It comes natural to him. It didn't come
Exactly.
natural. It didn't come natural to Dominic Ducharme.
And you see the same
leader.
thing.
Yeah.
You see the same thing in the NFL. They say it all the time when, these amazing offensive and defensive coordinators get these head coaching jobs and they fail miserably at it. But then they go back to being coordinators and those offenses or defenses take off again. That's just how it is.
As Marty said, a head coach, your number one job is being a salesman. You got to sell the system, the concepts that you got to get the players to buy in to what you're selling. And the players never bought into what Dominic Ducharme was selling, even though they went to the Stanley Cup final. They were not, and Jeff Petrie was the outspoken guy about it because somebody had to speak up in the locker room that it wasn't working. They didn't like the system they were playing. It had to change, and it didn't, and it ended up costing Dominic Ducharme his job. But there you go, Dominic Ducharme in Vegas. Now, I don't follow Golden Knights closely enough, but I'm sure I would want Dominic Ducharme as an assistant coach on my team. I wouldn't want him as a head coach. And just for the reason we mentioned, it's leaders. That leadership comes naturally to some people, and other people need to work at it. And even if they work at it, they don't become very good at it. And your analogy with the offensive coordinators is great. Yeah, you're in charge of the offense in the NFL, and you run a great op. Now you're in charge of everybody. And I remember when I became sports editor at the Gazette years ago, and they sent me to a management 101 conference. And it wasn't just media people. It was all kinds of people who were new in management positions. And one of the speakers shows up, and there's about maybe 100 of us in the room. And there's a table, and he jumps up on the table. Wow, what the hell is this guy doing? And he goes, "Welcome to your new world in management. You're always on stage. Everything you do is being watched and analyzed by the player, by the people working under you. When they're at the water cooler or the coffee machine, they're going to be talking about what you did, what you said, whether they like you, whether they don't like you. That's the reality of being in management and being a leader. And that's, some people have the ability to stand on that stage and some people don't. Marty definitely has that ability. I think Marty St. Louis is a good coach. I think he'll become a very good head coach. He knows the game so well. He knows the X's and O's. He looks at the game a little bit differently than other coaches, which is a good thing. He has an offensive mind. He wants team to play an offensive style of hockey, which is good. But and as Gordon said, he's learning on the job, and it's tough. Like, coaching in the NHL is so difficult with everything that's happening. And again, I think he could use some more help.
Yeah, I think so too. And things that don't help him out and that he kind of has to figure out is it seems like every week there's a new whipping boy in town for the Montreal Canadiens. And I don't know, I'm seeing some similarities between this one and an old whipping boy. Patrik Laine is the new whipping boy in town. Now, seeing a lot of similarities in the way people talk about him, in the way that they talked about Mike Hoffman. Now, the difference is they were playing two separate types of hockey. Mike Hoffman, I don't think he ever once was put on the ice when the puck was in the defensive zone. Patrik Laine finds himself quite often in the defensive zone. And listen, I understand your bag can be offense. I have no problem with that. But when you're not scoring goals, you're not even shooting the puck, and you find yourself in the defensive zone, you better put some freaking effort in. And, I remember early in the season, I think it was after a loss against maybe Philadelphia, I came on this podcast and I said, to be frank, I rarely swear on this podcast, but I said, can somebody give a shit? And Patrik Laine looks to me and to a lot of people so disinterested in playing hockey from the opposing blue line in. That's once it hits the neutral zone, he starts gliding. And that rubs people the wrong way, especially with the way the team is playing. He's not scoring goals again. He's passing up opportunities to shoot on 2-on-1s. It's
passing the Christian Dvorak.
Yeah, exactly. It's just really hard to comprehend. And the other issue is that Mike Hoffman was not an integral part of this team. He was playing on the third and fourth line, power play specialist, whatever you want to call him. Patrik Laine is playing on the second line. He's getting 15 plus minutes a night. Well, he was before he started getting benched. And when you're on the ice for that many minutes, you're not going to be in the offensive zone all that often. No one's expecting him to be a shutdown winger like Mark Stone. But man, it is hard to watch sometimes.
Well, you know who Patrik Laine looks like? Patrik Laine.
Yeah.
That's who he was in Winnipeg. That's who he was in Columbus. That's why Pascal Vincent benched him and made him a healthy scratch last season in Columbus early in the year. The effort level is he floats out there a lot, and he has very little interest in playing defense. And that's the way I think the Canadiens knew that when they got him. Yeah. I think that's why they were the only team willing to take on all his contract, and how they got him for basically nothing. That speaks volumes about just the reputation that Patrik Laine has around the league. He missed the first part with that knee injury. He came in, he was on fire, right on the power play. Everything he shot went in. He's only got 2 even strength goals now. He's like 25 games he's played now. Disinterested in that game in Anaheim on that back check. He stopped moving his feet at the red line and just coasted back and had a front row seat for watching the goal. Doc on the third goal was a similar situation. Good on Marty that he benched both of them. And I was speaking with Chris Nyland about this the other day. And I was saying, when you're on the bench and you see a coach bench guys like that, like, what's your reaction? He says, a lot of guys are like, finally, finally. Like, the players see what's happening too, right? They see a guy who's not working. And it sends a message not only to Laine and Doc, but to the whole team. Like, okay, we have standards here and you're not playing up to our standards. But Patrik Laine, the last 6 games, he has 0 points. He's -6. The last 5 games, he has 4 shots on goal total. The game against LA at 11:33 of ice time, no shots, no hits. If Patrik Laine isn't providing offense, he's doing nothing, right? And the last few games, he's doing nothing. And it's hard to get to know him. Like, we haven't had a lot of – he seems like a moody guy. And, he went through his mental health issues there. And I'm wondering how mentally he reacts to being benched, how mentally he reacts to being dropped down to the 4th line and then to the 3rd line. And I'm wondering if it's not worth, and you don't like to reward guys when they're not working hard, but is it maybe worth giving him a few shifts on the number 1 line, take Slavkovsky's spot and let him play with Suzuki and Caulfield and say, okay, let's see what you're going to do now. And then if he still does nothing, then you got a real problem, right? But it's sort of that, it's hard that it, like, he seems like a guy who's just like sort of a moody guy, and like, oh, you're going to put me on the 4th line? Okay. I'm going to try even less.
Yeah.
And if that is the attitude, and I'm speculating that's a horrible attitude to have. But I don't know. You got to get him going, right? You got to get him going if you want to have any hope of getting in the mix for this moving forward. You can't just – and the Canes aren't drawing a lot of power plays either, right? So it's not like you can say, okay, he's coasting out there, but he'll score his goals on the power play. He's really doing nothing to help this team right now. Like Marty St. Louis said when he benched him, he's not helping us at either end of the ice. He's not playing defense. So as a coach, the only weapon you have is ice time, right? The next weapon is to make him a healthy scratch, which is what Pascal Vincent did last year when he was head coach in Columbus. And he said his quote was one of his quotes was, he needs to realize that he's not more important than the Columbus Blue Jackets. And for Patrik Laine, I mean, he is coming back from that knee injury, right? So he needs a lot of time. So that's there, but you can be tired, but it's the lack of effort that, like just coasting around. And he does everything. Everything he does seems to be in slow motion, even when he has the puck, right?
And that's fine. He doesn't have the speed.
When he has the puck, like he slows things down and he sees the game differently. And, Sean Monahan did that also. That's sort of his style, right? He can slow things down and control the pace of play. That's fine. But I mean, he's got to work like Sean Monahan in the defensive zone too. Like you gotta bust your butt and back check. And I think it was really important for Marty to send that message that this isn't acceptable. I don't care who you are. If you're Patrik Laine, if you're Kirby Dach, if you're dogging it, you're going to sit. And as I said, if he doesn't get more of an effort from him moving forward? Does he do what Pascal Vincent did and make him a healthy scratch for a game? Maybe that gets through.
Well, the whole thing is it's funny. I also remember saying this a couple weeks ago, that winning and scoring goals and playing well, it kind of hides a lot of bad tendencies, that you could, they kind of get overshadowed by the winning and the good mood and, everything's going well. And I remember saying those tendencies, Patrik Laine has been like this since he arrived in Montreal. That's the first thing.
Yes, who he is.
Exactly. That's the first thing. But he was scoring a lot of goals. I said this about the Canadiens when they were winning a lot of games, but they were still taking a lot of penalties. I said, this is going to rear its ugly head at a point. It's going to come to a head. It has to, because it's just the way it's going to work. And it did. So Patrik Laine, I don't know. I mean, this is something where, when you're not even shooting the puck, that is, it's like, hey, what's going on here? Because, if he's scoring on the power play, then, all things are being forgiven. And again, it's very funny because what was it last week, 2 weeks ago, when the Canadiens lost to the Devils and he made that pass to Mike Matheson in overtime? Mike Matheson was getting the height of shit from fans saying, trade him, get him off the team, cut him, buy him out, do this, do that. He's worthless. He's this, he's that, he's nothing. Because at that point, Patrik Laine could do no wrong. Well, now things shift very quickly, and it seems like he can't do anything right. And, Martin St. Louis can have all the bullets in the chamber that he wants. But it comes back to what I said before, in that the players got to want it. And I think Patrik Laine has to understand the same message that got through to Yoel Armia. And I don't think that, first of all, if he's not getting put on waivers, that's not going to happen. But he needs to understand that he is probably playing, he has one more year under contract after this. If he looks as bad, if he keeps looking as bad as he does, some team will give him a 1-year contract. But after that, you're kind of playing for your NHL life, because it can move fast. It can move fast with types of players like this, because coming into the team, he had a lot of red flags already. And they took a chance on him, and now we're seeing what some of those red flags are.
And, when he went into the player program there for his mental health issues, he had said he didn't even really want to play hockey anymore, right? That was one of the things that he said afterwards. And then he comes to Montreal and he gets that incredible welcome, that incredible start, and like fans are going crazy for him. And he's at a high, right? As they say, Montreal's the best place in the world to play when things are going great, and the worst place when things are going bad. He's experienced both of those in a very short period of time. But I mean, it is who he is. I mean, the first year in Columbus after the trade from Winnipeg, he played 45 games with the Blue Jackets. He had 10 goals. He was minus 29 in 45 games. So this is plus minus, take with a grain of salt. But if you're minus 29 in 45 games, you're not doing much in your own end. And I don't know. He's one of those guys. I don't know this is where Marty St. Louis comes in good, because he's very good with people. He's got great people skills, great communication skills. And Patrik Laine's not like, you got to, do you kick him in the butt? Do you pat him on the back? Like, how do you handle? That's why I'm suggesting, do you give him a game? You put him on the number one line with Suzuki and Caulfield and see if that gets him going, and if that creates a spark. And maybe there is something there with those three guys together. Put your three best offensive players on the same line. At this point, I would try that if I was Marty. And again, you're walking that line, like you're almost rewarding a guy for non-performance, right? But you got to try something. Like you got to do something. And if that doesn't work, then you really got a problem.
Yeah, well, maybe it's just the way he's being employed, because, like we said, deployed, I should say, because he
was playing with Kirby Dach and Newhook for a long stretch there, and neither of those.
But all those guys, see, it's funny because we said when when Patrik Laine has the puck on his stick, time seems to slow down, and that's fine.
Yeah.
That's okay. However, he's probably more effective without the puck on his stick, because when he's most effective is when he's ripping a one-timer, not dictating the pace of play. You can slow things down all you want, but that just means the other team has more time to get into position to block your lanes.
Yeah.
So,
and the power play, when he was scoring all those goals, one of the reasons was like Cole Caulfield all of a sudden became a decoy on the power play. Right? Like Cole scored on the power play the other night. It was his first goal on the power play in 31 games, I think. So both of them on the same line. Now you got which way is Nick going with the puck, right? Is he going on Cole? Is he going to and maybe that works. And you drop Slafkovsky down and have him play with Doc and Newhook for a couple of games. But I think you gotta, like, going into this week, if they lose these 2 games on the weekend, like, season's over as far as any kind of playoff hope, right? I think they need to win both games to have a hope of getting really back into it. But so do you wait until after the break and it's too late? Do you do that this weekend? I'd be tempted to do it this weekend. I'd be surprised if Marty does. But if I was coaching him, I'd try that just to see, sit down with them and say, look, it hasn't been working. I'm going to put you up with the 2 best guys on our team on the number 1 line. Show me you deserve to be there.
Yeah, and it goes without saying.
At both ends of the ice, show me that you deserve to be there.
And it goes without saying, because he's been playing some pretty good hockey as of late. Slafkovsky, you got to have a conversation.
Yeah. I mean, it's not. I mean, you talk with Slafkovsky also. You're not being punished.
Yes.
We're doing what's best for the team. What I think is best for the team right now, and you're going to go down and play with Doc and Newhook.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's I think because they got to get Laine going again. I'm repeating myself here, and it can't just be on the power play.
So in finishing up, I think we're done with the Habs now. Let's just end off here. Who you got this weekend?
For the 2 games?
No, for the Super Bowl.
For the Super Bowl. Well, the Kansas City Chiefs. Certainly looks like the NFL wants the Kansas City Chiefs to win the Bowl game, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it does. So the league wants a team to win. I'm going to say the Chiefs are going to win.
It's funny because my uncle asked me this a couple of days ago, and he watches football. He's like you. He watches football. Main source is hockey. He's all hockey all time. And he says to me, he goes, so who's going to win on Sunday? I go, everything analytically in my brain is telling me it's going to be the Eagles, because the only spot, they're better here, they're better there, they have this, they have that better, but they don't have the better quarterback. And it just seems like when the chips are down, the Chiefs find a way, they get a break, and
every close call goes the Chiefs' way. I mean, those 4th down gambles by Buffalo, I mean, certainly looked like got the ball over the yard. It just seems like every
I know. I hear you.
And I'm sure the NFL's happy that Taylor Swift's going to be at the Super Bowl, and Kelsey, and it's about ratings and stuff, right? So I imagine that every close call will go the Chiefs' way. And as you said, Mahomes is Mahomes. Just seems we're talking about finding a way to win. He's a guy who finds a way to win, right? He's amazing the way he just finds ways to win. And he gets a little.
It's funny. I don't know if you saw this, but I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago at Media Day, the head of the NFL Referees Association spoke to the media, and he came out with this quote: "It is ridiculous to think that an officiating crews in the NFL, they don't officiate the same team more than twice in a season. And it's ridiculous to think that 17 different officiating crews, or however many refs they have, are all in this ploy to fix games." But on the other side of the coin, isn't it amazing? So, you know what? I'll say this. I don't think the refs are, if the fix is not in, but isn't it amazing that your refs are so bad that so many people can buy into this conspiracy?
Well, the NFL obviously thinks it's a concern, right? I mean, gambling is huge. The NFL runs for gamblers, right? That's a big part of the thing. And if people are starting to question, whether teams are getting calls or not getting calls, or maybe more reluctant to put some money on the game, which is bad news for the NFL. And I laughed. I saw it. I think it was on Facebook or Twitter the other day. Somebody said that Mahomes wears number 15 because that's how many yards you get penalized if you touch him. Just as a reminder.
I saw that one too.
And just as a reminder to the defenders, if you touch me, you're getting 15 yards. I thought that was pretty good. I thought that was pretty good.
I'll give you.
Tim, I saw his pregame meal, and it was him with 2 refs sitting having dinner. Some fun stuff. The Super Bowl's always fun. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's great. If you have a chance.
Because Canadiens, if I remember right, the afternoon games used to start at 3 o'clock at the Bell Center.
Yeah.
And it was a pain, especially if you're covering the game because, you're not finished
work
until 7 or filing your story and you're missing the first part of the game. And same for fans. So now the 1 o'clock starts are perfect, right? The game's over by 3:30. Fans can either go back home to watch the Super Bowl, they can go to a bar or a restaurant, go to a friend's place. For us working, we get our work done before the Super Bowl starts. So kudos to whoever it was in the NHL or the Canadiens who decided to make these games 1 p.m. starts. I said they're so much fun to be at. It's just a great atmosphere both of these days. And hopefully the Canadiens come up with a better effort than they have in the last 5 or 6 games.
Sure. I think at this point, fans in this city are really intelligent. And, the biggest thing, it's funny. I brought someone from out of town to a hockey game once, and someone, I think this is way back in the day. I think it was Hal Gill. He blocked a shot, and the fans went nuts. And he goes, "Man, you'd never see, what are they clapping about?" I go, "He just made a big play, blocked a shot." He goes, "You'd never see that in Florida." Fans here are very, very smart. They know what's going on. And I think they're not even expecting wins. They're hoping for wins. They're not expecting wins. They're expecting a game. Yeah. That's it.
Well, we come back. If we're back here next Friday night, we'll have a pretty good idea of whether the season's over or not for the Habs. Right?
There you go.
Have these 2 games, and then they're off for the whole week, sitting on a beach somewhere or doing whatever they're going to do. But again, if they can't get up for these 2 games this weekend, there's a real problem.
Yeah. And on that note, Stu, enjoy the football game. By the way, for the record, I haven't picked my side yet of who's going to win. I'm probably going to I'll give you this tip. I don't know, Stu, if you're not, I know you're not much of a gambler, but take $20. If the Chiefs are down by 10 points at halftime, throw $20 on the Chiefs.
Yeah. What's the spread? I haven't even looked.
It's been shifting a bunch. I think the last I saw it's Chiefs -1.5.
Okay.
So it's really spread right now. But anyways, enjoy the game. Enjoy the 2 hockey games. Great
fun
sports
weekend.
weekend.
One of my favorite weekends of the year.
And enjoy the weather because it's not going to be so bad out anymore.
All right.
Stu, and have a good weekend.
You too.
That was Stu Cowan. I'm Matt Ohayon. For producer Shane, we'll catch you next time.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different. Bittt, embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.